Hey guys, Joel and Christy here, and what are we doing today?
We're going to be talking about the pros and cons of renting instead of buying a home.
Sure.
And we want to suggest that you stick around because we're going to give you a pro that you've probably never heard before.
All right, so kind of our backstory here. We, and some of you may be saying, we know you rent because you talk about it all the time. So how do you know about the pros and cons between renting and buying? Well, we used to own a house back in the day, back when we were a little more stable in where we were. And so we owned a house for about 8 years, and we sold it when we moved from Tennessee to Texas, and decided to rent from there because we knew Texas was going to be just a pass-through place for us. So, so we do know a lot of the pros and cons of buying a home, having a home that you bought yourself, and so we want to try to give you some of those pros and cons between renting and buying, since we've seen it on both sides.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, let's start with the cons first. Our first con is, and everybody's going to know this one, you've heard it before, you're paying someone else's mortgage.
Yep. Yeah.
Totally get that. It is a accurate statement that if you're paying rent to, like for a townhome, you are paying someone else's mortgage for them, and you're not eventually going to own the home yourself.
Yeah,
so obviously that is a con.
That's right. Number two is being unable to make changes to the property, whether that be at the homeowner's request or at the HOA. Most of the places we live that are here in Florida have an HOA, and you can't make a lot of cosmetic changes on the outside of the buildings of the homes. So, and then the homeowner's also going to have some rules inside. Can only have so many nail holes in the wall and things like that. So the color schemes you might have to get okayed for. Any changes you make, like in the bedroom upstairs, we don't actually have a dome light in the ceiling. There's no light in the ceiling.
Or ceiling fan.
Or ceiling fan, anything like that.
Yeah.
And anything that we add to that becomes property of the homeowner. So if we were to add a light and a ceiling fan, we couldn't take that down because it would become the property of the homeowner at that point. Right. So we've chosen not to make those improvements.
We just use lamps on the...
Yeah, we just use lamps. Or, we're in the dark, whatever. But yeah, just being unable to make changes to the property is a big con between renting and buying. Because if you own your own home, then you can make all the changes you want. You can make whatever color you want. And so...
Well, if you have an HOA, you still want to have some outdoor rules, but... what you do on the inside of your house is your business.
That's right.
And obviously with renting, you can't do that.
That's right.
And that brings us to the third one is you're following someone else's rules.
Yep.
They give you this long list of this is what we expect from you, and you have to fulfill it on our schedule, which is a con because you don't get to make those decisions for yourself. Now, there's nothing crazy about where we rent. There's not like there's a rule about, like how often you change the air conditioning filter or something like that. Or, so, and then, where you put your garbage cans, things like that. There's rules about that. There's nothing completely crazy, but there are rules that you get to determine on your own if you own your home.
That's right. All right, so let's look at some of the pros between renting and owning. Number one, getting out of rent is easier than selling a house, at least most of the time. Usually if you're renting, you want to move, you usually have to pay an extra month's rent, something like that to break your contract. If you're doing it at the end of the contract, you don't have to pay anything. So at the end of the lease, you don't have to pay anything. So it's a little easier getting out of rent than it is than selling a house. I know when we sold our home in Tennessee, it took about, we put it on the market right when we left in September, and didn't sell till December. So, and it could have stayed on the market even longer than that. So, but anyway, it's a little easier a lot of times getting out of rent than it is selling a home.
Yeah, and one thing that's kind of interesting here in our area is while Florida is still, there's always people moving to Florida there, and so the housing prices have remained kind of high throughout the state, I would say. But here in our subdivision, they decided to build some schools like within like a mile of our house. They put up a high school. They're working on a elementary
school. Yeah.
And there's already a middle school.
Yep.
And apparently, developers decided that obviously people are going to want to live close to those schools, so we should put up some apartment complexes. They put them out right outside our subdivision, and so all the people who had houses that were lining that street used to have this awesome view, and now they're going to see apartment buildings. And also they're going to deal with traffic that's coming out of that same road that they live in. So it's going to be more traffic when it's open, and it's also kind of ruined their view. And so a lot of the houses are like, people are trying to sell, and they're not selling because people see like there's a huge apartment building being built right there, and there's going to be a lot of traffic when it's completed and stuff like that. And so people are actually struggling to sell a house out of our subdivision now. Yeah. And the problem is that they probably bought it at a higher amount, and now they can't, they're like having to reduce the price of the home. So it's harder to sell a house sometimes than it is renting. See, if we decided that when our lease is up that we wanted to move, we don't have to worry about if anybody's willing to buy this.
That's right.
We're
we
done.
Just pick up and move.
We can just leave.
That's right.
So getting out of rent is a lot easier than selling a house most of the time. Second one is renting can be cheaper than owning, which allows for more money to go into retirement and high yield savings accounts. Now, there are some places that we've heard of, like in major cities where they've inflated the rent to a place where the rent might be higher than buying a house, especially like maybe a condo or a townhome. But like in our area, renting is cheaper than buying a house, because you not only have to think about the mortgage and the property taxes, which are high in Florida, and also homeowners insurance, but you also have to think about the majority of the homes in this area have an HOA. I think the last time we looked, the HOA in our area, in our subdivision, is like $200 a month or something. So there's an extra added amount that would be put on. And some of you may be saying, well, you're paying for all of that in your rent. And it's like, yes, we might be, but we already know what the full amount of our rent is. It's not a mortgage amount plus property taxes plus homeowners insurance plus $200 a month for an HOA fee. Yep. So, like when you add all that up, we've looked at it, we've ran the numbers, we would be paying a lot more for a mortgage right now for this house. That's right. If we actually tried to buy it. That's right. So sometimes that can be a pro, unless you're in one of those weird situations like we just mentioned at the beginning of the number. But most of the time, renting is cheaper than owning. That's right. And then number 3, we're going to talk about maintenance. So for a renter, most of the maintenance is not your responsibility. Right. So like if an air conditioner goes down, have a hurricane or tornado or some kind of storm that damages your home or your roof or anything like that, then you're not responsible for that. The homeowner is. And so and then I guess another example we have a lot of wild hogs that are running around in our neighborhood. This is the one that this is not something you've ever heard of before. Yeah. This is a pro for renting. That's right. So there's a wildlife preserve. I mean, literally just maybe a half a mile from where we live right over here. You can see where I'm pointing, but it's right over there. Yeah. It seems right over there. There's a wildlife preserve right over there, about a half a mile. And, so there has a lot of wild animals. We've seen bobcats and, gators. And we've also seen wild hogs. Now, we haven't seen them in the preserve, but we have seen them as they come out of the preserve and into the neighborhoods. I know I went out running one morning. There was a group of about 10 or 12 wild hogs up on the corner tearing up somebody's lawn. And we're going to insert right now a picture that he took. He stopped running to take a picture of the wild hogs. That's right. But we also have a picture of what it did to one of our neighbors' yards.
Yeah.
Which is like two or three doors down from us. That yard was ripped up.
That's right. And so we're not responsible for that as renters. We're not responsible for making sure those repairs are made. We're only responsible, according to our lease, for anything $200 or less, like air filters, light bulbs, things like that. Small repairs to the appliances. If the appliance has to be replaced, it's replaced by the homeowner. Things like that.
And the yard is absolutely handled by the HOA.
That's right.
We
So
have no responsibility.
We don't have to mow our
there.
grass. The only thing we have to do is pull up the grass in our little area back here.
Our patio
area.
The HOA doesn't go into our patio.
And so as far as maintenance goes, you're only responsible if you rent for a very small portion of that. I think what a lot of people forget when they buy a home is that they need to be prepared for maintenance things before maintenance things come up. Because once that happens, then you have to find money somewhere to, especially if you buy a home that's already been lived in, there may be appliances that are on their last legs. You may have to replace those pretty soon. I know when we bought the house back in Tennessee, we replaced the dishwasher and refrigerator probably within the first couple of years we were there. So you just never know what's going to happen, what you're going to have to replace, and the money that's going to take to do that.
Yeah. As a note on the wild hog story, there was an article published about it, and the HOA said that they were working with the Department of Agriculture to find a solution to keep them out of the yards, because it was there were a lot of upset homeowners because there are people who own their houses in this area, and the HOA expects you to keep your yard maintained if you're a homeowner. And so they were upset because how can they keep them from tearing it up again? Like they fix it and the next day they've torn it up again. Yeah. So the HOA was working on it, but either way, when they figure it out, they have to fix their yards.
Yeah, that's right. But in a perfect world, we not only have a house, but we'd be rent free we'd be mortgage free by now. But it's not a perfect world, and here we are. So we think about the pros of renting, and we're thankful for the home that we have right now, regardless of anything else that's going on. So
I do want to note that some of you may be thinking, why don't you just move somewhere else? And this is where his job is located.
Yeah.
In the future, there might be a time where we move to Tennessee, where our son and daughter-in-law live. Certainly the housing market's a little cheaper there. And we would buy a house then. But right now, we're just saving and not worrying about whether or not we have a house here where it would cost us a lot of money.
That's right. So if you're currently renting and thinking about buying a home, we want to encourage you. If you want to do that, then that's great. But we want to encourage you to make sure that you're financially prepared to handle those extra things that we talked about, like the maintenance, property taxes, homeowners insurance, HOA fees, all of those things, so that you aren't house poor in the future. If you forget about those things and you say, "Oh yeah, I've got to take care of that," and if you decide, and if you decide right now that you aren't ready to handle those expenses and renting is less expensive where you live, then wait a little longer and use that opportunity to build those savings accounts while you wait. It's an awesome opportunity to be able to do that. And then, be thankful for the home that you have and that you're renting right now, because we're thankful for where we live, and just the peace that's given us over the last, we've been in this one almost 4 years now. Yeah.
We were in Texas for 4 years, despite the fact that we thought it was going to be really quick. Yeah. We were there for 4, and we've been here.
We've been here 5 years almost. We've been in this particular home. We've been in it about almost 4 years, about 4 years now. So so kind of tell us in the comments, drop us the comments below, and let us know if you've ever dealt with wild hogs in your area, or any kind of wild animals in your area that's kind of wreaked havoc where you live. We'd love to hear that in the comment section below. If you have any other tips on renting versus buying, we love to hear those as well. But I think that's going to do it today for saving money for the long run with Joel and Christy. Don't forget the long run. Give yourself a little grace. Bye.